Today I'm going to take on Christopher Kimball's 75-minute pizza dough recipe and adding a few twists and tricks of my own to make it a little easier for you guys out there. Let's get started. The first step in making pizza is to warm up the oven slightly. I'll be putting the dough in here. Also get my pizza stone out. Start getting that warmed up. Needs to be about in the lower third so you can fit a bowl with dough on top here. I'm going to be testing one out here. It'll fit just right. Okay, so now I'm setting on to bake at 200 degrees. And I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes so it just sort of warms up, and then I'll turn it off. And after I get the dough made, I'll put it in there for about 40 minutes. So the next step is to get a 1 3/4 cup of water, and I need to warm that up to about 105, 110 degrees. I use the microwave because it goes faster. How long you put the microwave on sort of depends on how cold the tap water is. So in the winter it takes about 55 seconds, and in the summer it's more like 45 seconds. Here you can see I'm only up to about 92 degrees, so I'm going to have to put it back in for a little bit more warming up. Here I'll give it another 22 seconds. Now let's see what this one is. Let's see, it's a little bit blurry, but I'm reading 105, 110, 111. So now it goes in the mixer, and I use a mighty KitchenAid stand mixer. I find it's much more effective at making bread dough than using the Cuisinart machines. And I'm using the Rapid Rise Active Yeast. We're talking fast, fast, fast. So in goes the whole packet. Also check the dates on your packets, make sure they're not too old, otherwise they just don't work very well. And next we put in a tablespoon of sugar, give it a little something to feed on as it starts warming up and becoming active. And we'll put on the paddle mixer and give it a good mixing for a few minutes to make sure everything is well dissolved. Okay, that's been about 4 or 5 minutes and everything is well mixed together. We'll take out the paddle now and start adding the rest of our dough ingredients. Next in is 4 cups of flour. I like to give it a little tap and even off. There's 1. 2. And I find it's good to count out loud. If you get interrupted with a phone call or a kid or something, it's easy to lose count and not be quite sure how many are in there. That's 3. That's 3. 1 more. 1 more. Up, and there goes the timer for the oven. You can see what I mean about interruptions. At least I'm filming today and could go back and check the video. Here I'm just turning the oven off. It's just warmed at 200 degrees for about 10 minutes. And now we'll just leave that as a warm spot. So next into the batter is a 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. Salt's very important for your yeast dough. Looks like I'm running a little bit low on salt here. Salt's one thing you never feel like you're going to run out of. It costs 50 cents for a whole thing. So, drat. I'm going to have to find more salt. Kosher salt will do in a pinch. It's not quite as dense as table salt, so a little bit extra doesn't hurt. Anyway, one of the things I like to add to my basic pizza recipe is a little bit of wheat bran. I think it sort of makes the bread look a little bit more rustic, and it's sort of fun to do, and it's, healthy too. So I like Bob's Red Barn wheat bran. They're in a good heaping 5 or 6 tablespoons. Works out pretty good. And then finally we need to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And it's in. And now the KitchenAid came with this flat dough hook, which I found was completely useless, and I bought a spiral one later on after that came out, and I find it works fabulously. So use a spiral dough hook and put it on the lowest setting, and this will need to go for about 4 or 5 minutes until the dough is very pliable and very damp looking. I like to use a pretty wet dough for my pizza. The added moisture sort of makes the steam pop up and gives me nice large bubbles in my dough. And while that's working on, I'm going to put my bowl that I'll be putting the dough in inside the oven to warm it up a little bit before I put it in for its first rising. So you can see the dough's getting a little bit more sticky, and we're almost there. Another couple minutes and it's even stickier yet, and we're calling that done. Since it's such a sticky dough, I like to spray a little Pam on my spatula and in my bowl so it doesn't stick to everything. And so now I'm scraping it out of my mixing bowl and into the bowl I just warmed up slightly in the oven. And I'll cover that with saran wrap or Glad wrap that's also been sprayed with Pam and put that in the oven. So there's the dough. You can see it's a nice thick gooey consistency, which is just right. I'm now getting out a piece of Glad wrap there, big enough to sort of cover the bowl. And I'll spray one side of it with Pam and apply it right on top of the dough. So you can see here I'm putting the sprayed side right on top of the dough and sticking it to the walls of the bowl. This dough blob will expand about 2 or more times and get nice and puffy, and this will go up with it, but keep it nice and moist. So now into the oven it goes. And the power is turned off on the oven, so it's just a nice warm place. And now I'll put it on to rise for about 40 minutes, should be about the right time. Sometimes I found it's taken longer to rise than usual, and let it go for an extra 5 or 10 minutes till it looks like it's, doubled in size. So now I'm getting ready. This was one of my other tricks. I used to put the dough right on the pizza peel with the cornmeal and try to slide the whole mess in the oven, and never had any great success doing that except making a giant mess. So now I've switched to building the pizza on a piece of parchment paper and putting that on the pizza peel, and that slides very easily in the oven without things falling off, and makes it even easier getting everything back out without making a huge mess. And so now while the dough is rising is the time to assemble the stuff to go on top of the pizza. So I find the Sorrento mozzarella works pretty well. It gives me a nice creamy cheese, and I'm making 2 pizzas out of this one dough blob, so I'll use one pound block and cut it in half, and use half the cheese for one and half for the other, so that's about 8 ounces of mozzarella, which when you spread it on doesn't look like it's a lot, but somehow it sort of seems to grow when you cook it. So now I'm just giving it a nice grate into separate bowls, and now I'm working on the extra ingredients for my fancy pizza. Pizzas are fun. Whatever you have lying in the house and enjoy, you can put on a pizza. I've even put on, barbecued pork, whatever. So today I'm just doing sort of a quick veggie and pepperoni pizza. So I'll have red peppers and pickled hot peppers and black olives and onions and pepperoni. And the parents' pizza. The kids just prefer just straight pepperoni, so we'll be doing one of those too. But whatever you have. I also make a few exotic pizzas, which is pesto and mozzarella, or margarita pizza, which is just chopped up tomatoes, basil, olive oil, and that's fabulous. So, as I say, whatever you have lying around and enjoy is fun to put on a pizza. Thing to keep in mind is if you put the veggies on top of the pizza, it's going to take an extra 4 or 5 minutes to cook than just a straight cheese or cheese and pepperoni pizza. So you sort of time it for the short amount and then sort of keep an eyeball look on it. So now I'm getting out my hot pepper rings. These are pickled hot peppers, and if you've never tried these on a pizza, I recommend it. They're pretty spicy and a real treat. They're not just sort of jalapenos, but they're sort of hot and pickled at the same time, so it gives it sort of a tang. So I got out a good handful and dry it on a paper towel there while the dough is rising. The other thing I really like are the sliced back olives. You can get these handy small cans of sliced back olives that I rinse off and find is just the perfect amount for one pizza. Of course, I like a lot of olives on my pizza. My daughters don't care for olives so much, but I find that I like them a lot. So the black olives come in sort of packed in juice, so you need to give them a good rinse before you put them on the pizza. The juice is not all that attractive. Rinse them under the water a couple times and then dry them out on the paper towels too. Then they'll be just right. So I've got the parents' pizza with the veggies and the cheese and pepperoni, and I'm just using a canned Don Pepino's pizza sauce, which is okay. Sometimes I make my own. Checking the timer, I still have 20 minutes to go for the dough to rise, so I'm in waiting zone here. So looks like I've been at it for almost an hour. We started about 1 o'clock. Through the magic of time, I'm down to about 2 minutes there to see if the dough's ready. 5, 4, 3. And now the timer says the dough has been in there for 40 minutes, so let's take a look and see if it's ready.